Let's go. We are live on YouTube on a Wednesday. Don, how you doing?
I'm okay, Josh. Yourself?
I'm doing well. We decided to jump on a little early here. There's obviously a lot of Twitter buzz going on. We don't normally address the rumor of the day and all of that. But kind of prompted me before we speak with the second leading scorer in Bills history, Rian Lindell, who's scheduled to join us at noon.
Yeah.
Figured it might be fun for 15 or 20 minutes here to kind of talk to you about what the lay of the land looked like, right before free agency began. Where after the combine, the league calendar is the same as to when you were there, and maybe you could just remind everybody, what your duties were, for the past 20 years at One Bills Drive, and then maybe we'll get into a little bit what it looks like inside those rooms and inside the war room, like a couple days before free agency begins.
No, it sounds good. I think one of the things I really envy about free agency now, as opposed to when I was there. When I was there, it started at midnight.
Okay,
we were there at midnight.
Okay,
now I think it's 4:00 Eastern on the 15th next week. Right?
Yep.
So
the legal tampering period starts on the 13th. Let me ask you, when did the tampering really begin?
We were a bit paranoid. By the way, legal tampering is quite the oxymoron.
Yeah, sure is. It sure is.
But Jim Overdorf was kind of command central. I worked directly for him. I helped to first. I was ready to do kind of mock contracts based on conversations that were happening that would eventually, hopefully, become real contracts.
Right.
But they were in a format that both Jim and I and the agent could understand. The agents are a huge player here.
So a typical agent, how many guys did he have working for him, like in that time frame? Or like an agency?
If it's a player that you're pursuing on night one of free agency, you're dealing. You're right. You're dealing with not a fly-by-night agent. You're dealing with an agency, probably a top guy now. They've had their meetings and they have other free agents that they're putting out there. But for a night one free agent that you're flying in to entertain and talk with everyone there, you're dealing with a top guy at an agency for sure. So.
Okay. So you're pursuing someone, you guys all in the building. Is there a roadmap? Is there a game plan? Is there, so before the midnight deadline?
It sounds like, hey, today's free agency. Let's go.
Talk to me about the legal tampering period, or what you did or did not do with somebody before you were quote unquote allowed to speak to them.
Well, it was a bit of a gray area. Teams, there's a couple things at play here. You're not allowed to talk with agents specifically about the player at that point before this legal tampering period started. We really didn't have that, but we were careful of email because the league could always monitor your emails and see your subject matter. You had to assume that at some point they were going to want to see your emails time-stamped. So the conversations happened by phone where, quite honestly, they could see that there was a call made, but they couldn't know what the content was.
Okay.
Which.
So how did you get messages to players then?
Because
they had to.
They had to go through the agent. You really did.
Okay.
You really did.
Not players.
We're talking about March. The players aren't there.
Right.
In March. They're not. I mean, they're probably not even in town.
Okay.
So, you're kind of worried about that because they're about to go see other places too. But the preparation for that started weeks before. We had a show on this about the Excel spreadsheet showing everyone in the room. Okay, if we sign this player and this is his perceived market value,
right?
Here we go. You get his player, but look what it does to the cap, and look what now you can't do. Right. And I remember when Marv first came in as GM in 2006, we had this meeting. And, hey, we got to let Sam Adams go. We got to let Lawyer Malloy go because look, if we did, but he kept saying, okay, but who are we going to replace him with?
Right.
Like he was really frustrated.
Sure.
He kept his composure. Of course, he was Marv. He was a gentleman, but
were there names? Okay. So somebody like Lawyer Malloy, somebody like Sam Adams, kind of maybe similar in a sense where did you have a sense usually if a guy was going to go get the most money?
There were rumors. Now, again, Twitter. We're talking about today. Obviously, we're talking about with the current Bills with Poyer and Tremaine Edmonds. Twitter wasn't as prominent back then. Pro Football Talk, believe it or not, this is how they really earned the team's I don't know about respect, but some credibility, because a lot of the rumors they were putting out there ended up to be true.
Okay. I remember Pro
They really
Football
did.
Talk in
Yeah.
2000. All the coaches on the staff would keep refreshing it to see if there were any coaching rumors. Because you're right, there was no Twitter. The information was not as immediate as it is now, and there was not a way to directly contact a player or an agent, or indirectly contact them by saying you are interested or whatever on Twitter, as opposed to today.
Well, the player, the free agent to be, would assume there was interest by their current team. It's rare that a player of that caliber would be told that he wasn't. I mean, they might privately know it because of numbers that John Guy, the vice president of player personnel, he's going to come on with us Monday. My gosh, you're not going to believe. I mean, he was intricately involved. But he and his staff would go so far, and I'm sure the current Bills too, as to look at the needs of other teams.
Sure, of course.
Obviously, this team needs a receiver.
It's a giant chessboard, right? Like, it's a giant chessboard. So
this team needs a linebacker. They rank 31st against the run. They might draft, but they're likely to be hot for our guy.
So when I called you this morning and told you, I wanted to talk about this, and I showed you the tweet about Tremaine Edmonds specifically, you brought up the name Paul Posluszny.
Yeah.
Similar situation, maybe not. Did he get top of the market money when he left? Close?
Yeah, he got top tier money. It was a shock, really. He was a guy that his agent had told the team that, of course he loves Buffalo, Penn State. He's coming on the show too,
right?
Either next week or the following week. Love to get his perspective. But in the meantime, there are times where you just really, we heard he's going to go on a visit, but wink, wink. We kind of think he's just he's doing this to find out what the market is. He'll ultimately come back to us and say, or his agent, hey, this is what they're offering me. Right. And we'll match it, And I think, I know we're talking about the Bills here, but the Baltimore Ravens are going to be that team that's going to be watched in that regard.
Sure. Well, there's some shenanigans going on there. The fact that all of the teams have come out and said that they're not going to pursue Lamar Jackson. I mean, are you like,
that's collusion? You can't
correct.
do that.
Well, yeah, correct. I mean, it's really hard to prove.
Yep.
Like the tampering, really hard to prove. But it's amazing how none of these teams are going after a former NFL MVP because he wants guaranteed money, and they want to break that. They want to stop the Deshaun Watson contract before it goes to all of the other quarterbacks.
Hurt. Exactly. That really hurt the team.
Yeah. So it's interesting how that's going to play out. So a guy like Tremaine Edmonds, a guy like Posluszny. So you guys in the building felt like, okay, he's going to go look around. We drafted him. He's been here 4 years at that point.
That's key. We drafted you. We took a chance on you. Another player that comes to mind too is like for an undrafted rookie free agent, like a Jabari Greer. People remember him. He ended up being, the nickel corner, started here and there, but then he got really good starting money at New Orleans, ended up playing in the Super Bowl and winning it. And you feel like, oh man, you should have given us a chance to match, because we see the player that you've become. We helped you develop into that player you become. And remember, you weren't even drafted.
Were there times when, so let's say Tremaine goes on a couple of free agent visits and the team says to him, hey, we'll offer you this money, but you can't call the Bills. You can't, does that happen? Like, because, it's always don't let him out of the building. So don't let him out of the building probably means don't call the Bills and see if they'll match this.
Yeah. I can only speak for that from our own end. We're a player in the same situation that we were courting from another team.
When you had Mario Williams come in,
did
Mario Williams leave the building and then decide to sign with you guys, or did he?
He stayed for the full. You're allowed, I think, 24 hours from the time, or 24, 48. It might have been at the point. But what was key, what we really liked about it was his fiance.
Okay.
Stayed here
Okay.
for a few extra days looking for houses. Gretchen Getter
Okay. Yep.
was assigned. Now, she had nothing to do. She was the community relations
Sure.
VP, but she was a smart
Yep.
lady.
Yep.
She said, basically, please hang around with her, show her
Yep.
houses, show her where, places to get your hair done.
It's funny. It's funny how funny what can, these people are, they're human beings.
Yeah.
And you sometimes forget that it's a name on the back of a jersey or a fantasy football, compiler of stats. But you're right. Like, I mean, if Mario Williams' fiance was shown around town, Gretchen probably was able to, show her cool places to eat and to shop and where, a good neighborhood to buy a house. And that's the underrated stuff. When they always say it's like a whole, the whole administration, it's the whole organization.
All hands on deck.
Yeah,
we also got really lucky with the weather. It was like 75 degrees for like a week.
Do you know, did he take the Bills offer and go back to either Houston or to anybody else and see if, like, was that a thing?
He went back to Houston, but we were really pleasantly surprised. Now, we put all our eggs in the Mario Williams basket in terms of cap space.
Okay.
I mean, that was it. Like,
sure. Now, did the
agent
agent and did he realize that? Like, there was no, like, you gave the max offer and there was no more room, right?
Only if he wanted to become. I think he wanted to become the first $100 million player. But there are creative ways to get there, as Greg Thompson can tell you, in terms of incentives and likely to be earns. And they want that bragging right.
Sure.
Was
that important to a lot of guys?
The agents, it is.
The agents,
yeah, because they want to use that as a recruiting tool going forward.
How competitive? How competitive did you find it between agents?
It's cutthroat. Yeah, even stupid stuff like when we would negotiate rookie contracts, there was a rookie pool, and if you weren't allowed to call it slotting, but in the previous year, if the 17th pick in the fifth round was paid this, they would want a 1% or raise on the signing bonus. That was the only thing that was really negotiable.
Okay.
And if you gave them a 0.5% raise, you were cheating him. You were insulting. Okay. This conversation is leaving a bad taste in my mouth. But if you gave them like a 1.25% raise or something, or sometimes the percentages were even less, all that matters is the percentage raise over the previous year was a little bit more than it was in the same slot the previous year. That way he could tell his players and future players, I got the player over market. So, and that might have been $500.
Okay.
The $500. You're talking about $500. I know, but you know what it means to me and the way I can frame what I do?
Let me ask you this. Yeah. How many times were you negotiating with the player? And I don't mean like literally, but how many times did you feel like you were just negotiating with the agent?
Almost all the time. Yeah. Again, they weren't around in March, but if they were, I don't know. I don't know how other teams did it, but we were just really careful to keep the conversation. It was a wink conversation. Hope you're doing well. Hope to see you again.
Sure.
Hey, did you hear, off-season workouts are coming. Hey, did you see in the strength room, we got 4 new awesome machines down there. Did you see the remodeled weight room?
Let me ask the question a little differently. I don't think I asked it well. When you're negotiating with a guy that you want to keep, how often did you feel like the player, it was more about the agent's ego or their needs or desires as opposed to the player?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. The good agents were able to kind of hide their own self-promotion and say, well, you realize, I just talked to him. The player really feels this. He really feels like he's earned a chance or to have this incentive. And so it's almost like, even if the player was right in the room, you really wouldn't acknowledge him hypothetically.
Okay.
The good agents would always come from the perspective of, hey, this is what the player told me he is important to him, whether he did or not.
Okay. Did you feel like, were there times when you knew a player was in the room, like while you were speaking to an agent? Or is that kind of a no-go?
They would be in a building. Normally, those conversations are behind closed doors.
Okay.
Yeah, the player would not be in the room, but he could very well be downstairs or, a meeting with his position coach, which was allowed.
Did the agents ever come with the players on a free agent visit?
The agents would come to town, yes, a few times. I mean, for the really big ones. Usually the first round draft picks.
All right, so how about this?
Yeah.
Mario Williams flies to town. Was his agent there?
I don't recall seeing him, but I was in my office helping doing a mock contract, which was like 40 pages long, and there were all these clauses that the agent made up that were, named after his kids and stuff. So that was a good indication for us that if he was putting that much thought into the contract, that because it took a few days to do, that we were going to get him.
So Mario Williams is in the building.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's showing him around, but you're having the money negotiate. Do they talk money at all with him, or you're talking to somebody on the phone? So then, what does he do? Does he step away and talk to the agent outside the building?
Yeah, we'd give him a nice room. We'd give him like the conference room.
Was it bugged?
It was not bugged.
You sure?
There were definitely people like the Chris Browns and the people that were just dying to get that an exclusive to show the player signing his contract. That we're kind of hanging around and maybe trying to do a little lip reading.
Sure. Well, and back in the day,
and body language too.
Of course.
If you saw the player, oh my gosh, really? But if you saw him nodding, you're like, this looks like it's going well.
How much different was a free agent visit or that process when they moved to the new administration building? The old building, I mean, the media, the offices, everybody was in one small space.
Yeah. I only started doing this in like 2005, maybe. So that was in the new administration building. So that's my only frame of reference from doing it. I do remember, though, in the old building.
Because the media scrum would be typically right outside your office on the third floor.
Mm-hmm.
So the media guys kind of had the run of the building, if you think about it. Whereas in the new building, they were kind of only allowed in certain areas.
Yeah,
right?
Downstairs, and Scott Bergstole had a room for him with some food, and they were taken care of.
But the old building, these guys were right up there.
Yeah,
right. Like you could see more. There was more access. You could bump into somebody in an elevator. Like you could have, like if Bryce Pop had.
Oh, sure.
I mean, it was much. It's funny now to think about how the media and the players and the coaches and the administration all were in a really tight space as opposed to, in this new building where I'm sure that played a part in the design of the building.
It did. I remember John Butler got mad at Bob Schatz and me. Rian Lindell just texted me that he's coming on here shortly. Because he was there with Chris Spielman, had talked to him. We recognized Chris Spielman.
Sure.
We were waiting to get on the elevator, but they were still talking. And he said, gentlemen, hello. Aren't you going to say hello to Chris Spielman? Like, sure, we'd love to say hi to Chris Spielman, but we didn't want to, interject.
Right.
So
that's funny. So Mario Williams, or I keep going back to him because he's a high profile guy.
The biggest.
Yeah, so he comes in the building. You're negotiating with someone who's not there, but you're also showing him around, giving him the tour. Like, was there a high profile guy that came in that you guys did not sign?
Oh, we lost players. Yeah, we lost players. Who was the receiver for the Jets that we were sure we had? And I think it was the year we ended up.
Not Wayne Krebet.
No, was it 2009? They were rich in receivers. It wasn't Wayne Krebet, and I think he went to Atlanta. Oh man, I'm sure a listener.
Bert Emanuel? No,
wasn't Bert Emanuel. That we were hurt by that one.
So, all right. So T.O.
Oh yeah.
Was that? Did he come in? Did he do the full tour?
He did. Yeah, he came in. There were certain people in the building that wanted to be very protective. They were worried that he was such a big deal that somebody just might say the wrong thing. They were real strangely protective of that visit.
Well, he's the biggest star who the Bills have ever signed, correct? Maybe other than Jim Kelly.
Sure. And we knew it was going to be a 1-year deal. And it's funny, people ask me about T.O. like, oh, how was he? He was fine. He was real good around the building. I wouldn't call him a leader. Okay. I mean, the most controversial thing he ever said was somebody asked him if they thought, Fitzpatrick or in 2009 or Trent Edwards should be the starter. He's like, well, for Fitzpatrick, I think you just saw him. He threw a 99-yard pass to me.
Right.
Yeah. He's
that's not all that controversial.
It wasn't. Yeah. He was on his best behavior, still thinking correctly that he was going to be, Buffalo was going to be a 1-year launching pad to show that he wasn't insane.
So the Poyer situation is a little bit different. You can tell that they maybe you're a little bit tired of New York State, a little bit tired of the taxes here, the weather, the climate, and that always brings up the handicap or the perception that Buffalo needs to do a little bit more. Obviously now with Josh Allen, I think that's clearly.
I don't mean to be rude. It's just Rian Lindell saying he's having a little bit of trouble popping on.
Okay. So I mean, I guess I often wonder about guys who come in here in March for a free agent visit and how much the city, the weather, the airport drive down to Orchard Park. Like, do you feel like that's a real thing? Was that a real thing? And now when you were there, they didn't have Josh Allen, didn't have the winning culture at the time. So you guys maybe were starting from a little bit of a deficit to begin with, but he's popping on now.
Yeah, the Rex Ryan part was interesting because we had the receiver. Is that?
Yep.
Hey, Ryan.
Yes, hello.
Ryan, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. Sorry about that. I'm kind of working in between devices here, so we made it work.
No, 12:03. There, we don't fine for being late. Ryan.
Yeah. You're not late for a team meeting. Thanks. We have the Bills' second leading all-time scorer, Rian Lindell, joining us. And Ryan, actually, I got quite a bit of feedback and interesting things on Twitter last night when I posted that you were going to come on, and I'm sure you do know this, but people were enamored with the statistic that you are the all-time leading extra point percentage kicker in NFL history. And then it got to be this whole conversation and thread between about 30 people. And we figured out that you've never missed an extra point in the NFL in the United States.
Do you know why that is?
Yeah, that is true.
So can you talk me through? I promised that I would ask what happened on that extra point in Toronto. Was there something?
I know. I think the field was in meters rather than yards, right?
Well, it was blocked. Some big guy from the Bears who had actually had a couple of blocks that year got in there. And I don't really know who. I shouldn't even throw anybody under the bus, but I will give you a hint. He still is employed by the Bills in some capacity. He came up and apologized.
Oh, wow.
So I'll let you stew on that.
Wow.
And he said, I'm sorry about that. And I said, hey, what am I supposed to say to an old lineman? Just get my finger in his face, and let him know. So I said, funny. That's all right.
Yeah, that brings me to
kick it better anyway.
There's a story about you that I don't know if you recall this, but it was the day after the Seattle opener. Okay, and we beat them pretty badly, but there was a fake field goal right down close to the goal line where Brian Norman was the holder, and instead of you kicking the field goal, he took the ball, fired it out in the flat to wide open Ryan Denny of all people, who scored a touchdown. So the next day I was walking into the cafeteria to get a bottle of water, and you were sitting down at a table with Kurt Chambers, offensive lineman. And I started talking to you about, hey, Ryan, oh, sorry, I'm sure you're bummed out you didn't get those 3 points instead of, and you looked at me really strangely like, hey, listen, almost like, hey, he's right here. And what was lost in the conversation was there was also a blocked field goal the day before, and he was discussing with you that somehow it was his guy that made the block, and so you thought that's what I was talking about. I wasn't talking about that at all. And Kurt, smart guy, picked up on what you were doing. He was like, "Oh, thanks a lot, Purdy. Oh, I did my best. You have to come here first thing and rip me for that." You guys played that really well. So.
Yes. I do remember that. Yes, I forgot kind of how the details, how it worked, but I remember you coming in and thinking, boy, Don's on a runner today. He's ripping everybody. Poor Kirk is sitting here. He's giving him the business here. But yes, I do remember it now.
That's really funny. Don, you've had a couple of those over our interview history with guys. Just a couple of funky little things.
That's right.
So you know what? When I was looking that up last night on Twitter, it kind of brought me back to your college career, and I figured we could maybe start there. Could you talk me through, growing up? Were you a soccer player? Did you decide to, kick? Did you know you were going to be a football kicker? And then, your decision to go to Washington State.
I actually, before you say that, I was interested that I didn't see anything about soccer in your history. I saw that you were like a football player. You played tight end, defensive end, and then you played some baseball. I didn't see soccer in there like so many other kickers did. So yeah, how did you end up kicking the football?
Yeah, well, soccer growing up, like a lot of people around, I just played youth soccer. Then in 8th grade, that was the first time we could play football. I mean, we could play it before then, but I would have had to be a lineman with the rules. And I said, I don't want to be a lineman because I was kind of bigger. So it was like one of those weight things. So I said, well, I want to run the dump. I don't want to run around being an lineman here when I'm 10. I want to do something else. So I waited till 8th grade. Who can kick the ball down the field? Hey, okay, I'll give it a try. So it went from there, being a kicker. So 8th and then 9th. And we had 10, 11, 12 for high school. And then it was just something that I could kind of do. I could just kick it down. I couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, but I could kick it into the end zone on kickoffs, so I could get the touchbacks there. And that kind of got some colleges looking at me. And I was going to go, I hate even saying it, even thinking it, because they're our arch rival, go to the University of Washington. Because I'm from Vancouver, Washington, which is like Portland. So you go up, 2.5 hours, and then there's Seattle. You go east about 5 hours, and there's Washington State almost. And then at the last minute, somebody switched from from Washington State to UW like a month before the season. So then it just kind of opened up at Washington State. It was invited walk-on to either one. I didn't have a scholarship either way, but to any of those. But so then off I go to Washington State, and it was a good situation to sit behind Tony the Toe, which I thought was one of the best kicker nicknames I've ever heard. Tony the Toe Truant. And then just kind of sat and bided my time for 2 years, and off I went and I played 3 years.
So
sophomore, junior, senior.
I noticed in my research of you, the 1997 season when you guys went to the Rose Bowl, the Ryan Leaf year, you kicked 60 extra points. I mean, that's an unbelievable amount of extra points in a 12-game season. Can you kind of talk to me about that team? I think people kind of sleep on how good that team was. I looked through some of the box scores. You guys are putting 50 on everybody.
Yeah, we did. 77 on poor Northeast Louisiana, who I think even had to run and change their name. I don't know what they are now, or Southwest Louisiana. There's something else now, Louisiana Lafayette. But yeah, nothing against them. Sorry, Louisiana. But it was just one of those things where everybody, it was kind of a senior at the right time, and then we needed this person to step up. They needed this person to step up. Of course, with Leaf was awfully talented back then, and then we had 5 really good receivers, the Fab Five, as they kind of called themselves there, and just kind of came together. And so we won. UCLA was highly ranked that year. I think Cade McNown. You remember all these names? Mm-hmm. This is fall of 97 now. So. We beat them. It wasn't overtime, but right at the end, it might have been the first game. Sometimes you play the preseason stuff, but it was like, okay, well, we got something here. And then everybody just kind of did their thing. We beat Arizona State in overtime that year, Arizona in overtime, and just kind of kept rolling. And we're good. We had a pretty good team. Won the Apple Cup there at UW, which was awfully nice. Got to celebrate on their field. There you go, again with their arch rival thing. Arizona State got us barely. I still can remember the play, sack fumble, and he ran it in at the end there as we were charging. And I think of that team, which is funny because at the time they didn't have the playoffs, of course. So we played Michigan in the Rose Bowl. They beat us kind of barely. It got down. It was a pretty good game, the January of 98 Rose Bowl. And they tied, I believe it was Nebraska, where they were co-national champions. And that was Greasy was their quarterback. Brady was backing up. And Charles Woodson had won the Heisman. So that was that Michigan team. And I thought, shoot, if we would have beaten Arizona State, now granted, they didn't give us a lot of respect, and maybe rightfully so, just because they were like, are we sure they're any good? Are we sure they're any good? But if we would have beaten them, we might have won and beaten Michigan. I think, criminy sakes, we might have had they probably still would have picked Nebraska. I think we could have been national champ. It was that close that year. It was crazy. I'm just kind of who you beat, just how it all works out. But we weren't.
Conversation.
People can say that all the time, I guess.
We had a listener just comment in that Israel Adonijah was the player who blocked your extra point. He was 6'6", 275 for the Bears. Somebody looked it up while we were talking here.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I have a feeling Ryan
who looked it up.
No comment there.
You know,
I love Eric. I love her. I felt bad. But he did come up.
Great.
I'm sorry, Ryan. Eric, you work harder than anybody in the state. What am I going to say? You know, this was what it was.
We're going to have him on. I told him after we finished his book, which I just bought, that we're looking forward to having him on. So interesting in college, the Bills, I remember, signed an undrafted free agent receiver, David Nelson, and I remember he was a pleasant surprise. He was really good. I think maybe because he played at Florida with Tebow, people didn't quite understand. He didn't have that much of a body of work of how good a receiver was because Tebow was running so much. Do you think with Ryan Leaf, you just mentioned the receivers, Washington State, the Fab Five, could that have maybe been like the reverse effect where maybe his numbers were what they were and he was considered 1 and 1A with Peyton Manning? Maybe his receivers were part of that I don't mean to suggest that you think he wasn't as good. Of course, we know how his career turned out, but a factor in like his receivers being so good, like maybe that's why part of his college success was what it was.
Well, I mean, there's certainly part of that. He was pretty talented. And it's kind of it's almost the chicken and the egg thing. Yeah, the receiver's good because of the quarterback, or the quarterback good because of the receivers, and it's probably a little bit of both. He would wing that thing around pretty darn good. He's from Montana, so he kind of I think the spotlight was probably at that age and that time in his life was probably the thing that kind of got him the most, having that kind of intense spotlight. Pullman is still a fairly small little town there, so he could kind of do his thing unfettered. So he was pretty talented. We did have one receiver that was the Arena League MVP, Chris Jackson, and then the other ones I think maybe got a little bit of a look here and there, but that was kind of it for the receivers. He was pretty talented though. But yeah, you might have a point. I mean, we were pretty good.
Sure was. So you finished your college career, and then did you have a sense that you were going to be looked at by the NFL? Obviously, we like to ask guys about their draft day and their draft experience. Kickers are obviously a little bit different. So can you kind of talk us through how you went from like when in college you knew that you'd get a legit NFL shot, and then kind of what it's like to go in as an undrafted kicker, to a kicking competition? Were you facing an established vet? Did you feel like you had a real shot at it?
Got a delay, I think. Is it frozen?
Oh,
there we go.
Yeah, that was I was trying to go to dental school. I was a biology major, and so I was thinking, okay, dentistry. And I remember kind of joking on, in pity when I would bomb a test. I have a better shot of being in the NFL than I do as going to being a dentist, because I'll never get in the dental school with my grades, And it was just such a long, and I would say something like that because it was just such a ridiculous thing to think. And I just never really, and then the pro days would come that senior where you kind of have to run the 40, which I never did, but you do some of those kind of tests. And I remember Mike Stock from the Chiefs came and worked me out and gave me a ball. Like I had a real NFL ball. I thought, okay, at least I got something. But no, not really. I just kind of they just kept asking, or nobody totally closed the door kind of a thing. And I went down to Dallas. Undrafted, like you said. I watched Janikowski get drafted in the first round. I do remember that because I was thinking, boy, that's a mile away from where I was with my stats and whatnot. But Dallas was a pretty good situation down there. They didn't have a kicker. They used to and you might remember this in the 90s. I think Eddie Murray was their kicker before they brought him back after, like Richie Cunningham, I think had just left, if you remember all these names from the 90s over in Dallas. But so I went down there with Tim Cedar, ended up winning the job. This is 2000 now. But it was kind of open. I mean, and he was a good kicker. So it was a decent little battle. I remember one of the guys, which we laughed about all the time. Well, I think this is the media guy saying this. And I think Tim Cedar is maybe a little more accurate, but I hear Lindell's good from 80. I thought, I'm good from 80? Like good from 80, not like one windy day he had one that snuck in. We're going to line up on the other 32-yard line. So anyway, they had somebody kicking off, so it was just field goals. Anyway, got released, and then Seattle picked me up. It was just kind of, it was kind of odd. I certainly didn't think it was going to happen. I mean, every little step, I was certainly appreciative of getting the T-shirts, and then I got a Dallas T-shirt hat. I'm thinking, hey, I was there, whatever. My locker's right next to Chris Warren, who was a Seahawk guy, and on the other side of him was Emmitt Smith, and there's Troy Aikman, and I'm just kind of a kid in a candy store, being a huge sports fan growing up, seeing all these people. Rocket Ismail had came in; he was their big free agent signing. So I thought, whoa, look at all these people, just kind of, wide-eyed, and just nothing to lose. So that first year, I actually did fairly well with Seattle. I got picked up the 5th game, and just kind of was the old week-to-week thing. And then I had a pretty good year because I didn't have anything to lose. And then that second year came. I mean, I'm getting ahead of your question here, but second year, then it's like, oh geez, all I have to do is don't miss. Oh no, come on, you've golfed enough to know that's not the mindset, right? So anyway, then off I went. But that was kind of the draft, free agency kind of thing. It was just nobody told me a definite no kind of thing, so I just kept going. My agent was really good. He did a good job of just kind of helping me out and keeping me going, and so it just kind of went from there.
When I'm kind of interested, when you're at a camp and you're competing for a job, and it's an open job, so it was you and Tim Cedar. I mean, are you every kick? Are you hoping he misses? Like, I mean, obviously you guys can be cordial and friends, but you guys are in direct competition for a very high-paying, high-profile job. Can you kind of just tell me, like, what's the dynamic between you and another guy when there's only 2 of you and there's only one job?
Yeah, this is a great point, because we had Bill Brooks on, and one of the things I remembered when he came to the Bills was after practice he would stay and coach the other young receivers, and he said he did it because he wanted the team to be better. If he didn't make it, so be it. But man, as Josh just mentioned, a kicker and a punter, no, it's you or no one. So it's got to be a little bit awkward sometimes.
I'm sorry, there was breaking up a little bit. You say with the 2 kickers?
Yeah, so the dynamic
there with somebody else.
Yeah, the dynamic between you and like Tim Cedar in year 1. Were you cheering for him to miss? what's that like for you? Because it's you or him, and there's only one job.
Yeah, it's rat's nest, like mentally, if you throw karma in there, because I mean, I have this life which is just unbelievable, fortuitous for me, and I couldn't imagine it, and here I am, and it's because other kickers missed more than I did. You know what I mean? So you kind of root for it a little bit. I tried to just get rid of, and if nothing else, for karma's sake.
Oh, we lost him. So maybe if he pops back on, we'll just turn the camera off or the video off. Unfortunately, that's that's live.
I got a couple great questions here for him.
That's live. That's live TV sometimes. Unfortunately,
you asked number 6 about the New England game here.
I'm always
speaking of. I was going to ask him. I'm sure you had the same question with Fred Jackson when he caught the pass at the end of the New England game.
Oh, and went down at the 1.
Yeah, was there part of him that was hoping that he would just score?
Well, I mean, if you want a game winner, I mean, an extra point, a 19-yarder is probably best case scenario. I'm always fascinated because when I was there, I watched the young kickers come in, and at that time Steve Christie and Chris Moore were the established kickers. Maybe tell him just to turn his camera off and we just have him audio.
He said he's going to go outside. He'll have better reception.
Awesome. So I'm always fascinated because these guys, these young guys would come in, and at the Bills situation at that point, Chris Moore and Steve Christie were the established veterans. They weren't going anywhere. They could have missed every kick in training camp, and still gotten the job. But the young guys obviously wanted to make every kick because they, got on tape and got a recommendation or a look somewhere else. But the true like battles between 2 unproven kickers like that, they're probably rooming together in training camp.
I don't know. They might be, yeah.
And then especially a special teams guy, You don't do anything else during practice. So you're spending a ton of time with the guy who you're trying to take his job. And it's not some entry level, $25,000 a year job. This is a big deal. This is one of 32 jobs in the world.
It's zero sum. I was impressed that he admitted that, because he's such a good guy. But I would just think maybe, of course, you have to be rooting for him to miss, but your body language can't.
Sure.
Sure. It's not Happy Gilmore.
And I mean, you don't want to
right?
focus. I mean, obviously, you want to focus on your own production and your own performance.
Yeah.
But you can't help but look and see, because it's not like you're both kicking at the same time.
You're kind of playing a game of horse.
Pretty much. Yeah, that's
right?
a good way. That's a good way to
Yeah.
put it. Yeah, that's a fair way to put it. A game of
Yeah.
horse where only one of you is going to come out on top, and the other one is going to get on a plane and not get paid. Like, you're not getting paid, like it's some of these kicks. I feel like maybe some of those kicks are even hold and have as much pressure attached to them as a game winner against New England. I feel like some of those training camp kicks, some of those preseason kicks, if the guy in front of you just made a 50-yarder and then you've got a 42-yarder right behind it, you damn well better make it. Because your job, your
it's a
livelihood,
track record. You're building your stat line is it.
It's it.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
All right, he's back.
Hey, Ryan, welcome
Hang
back.
on. All right, we got you. Oh, look at that! It's a nice day there.
Well, it's always sunny over here in Seattle, right?
There you go. Yeah, the reception's already better. We were just talking.
Sorry about that.
Like no, that's quite okay. We were just talking about how that dynamic of you and another kicker, kind of going at it before you're an established vet. Did that change for you at all once you were like an established vet and a younger guy would come in? You didn't necessarily have to root against the younger guy. You kind of wanted to see him do well, even though you knew, you were going to be the day one kicker.
Yeah, it was a little different, kind of depending on the year, I suppose, because you would have some guys come in that you are rooting for, and they're trying out for all the other teams. So you figure the job is yours. I mean, that's a different mindset than say the last year when Hopkins came in and they drafted him. It's like, oh geez, okay, and now I gotta beat out this guy. And you're rooting against him. But then the mindset, the older I got, I think the better I got with the mindset of just control what you can control. If I'm good enough, I'll play. Simple as that. It's not so much, I just have to outrun the bear, like that old joke, I just got to outrun you.
Got to outrun the
kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So I just worried about outrunning the bear, kind of a thing, If I was doing what I'm supposed to do and what I thought I was capable of doing, then everything will take care of itself. So I tried to focus more on that, but it might not have been as fun when Hopkins would kick a touchback out of the back of the end zone. I'll admit.
He was a bit freaky. Ryan, after that, honestly, you were one of my favorite guys to come through One Bills Drive. I was really bummed when that happened, but I was traveling with the team, and I remember the first time I saw Hopkins here and there. But we went to we were traveling in the preseason, whatever hotel we were at. Most of the players had their per diem and were going to nice restaurants, or there was a team meal. And I remember he had gone out and was coming back into the lobby with a bag of McDonald's. And I remember looking at him thinking, you if somebody told me you were 15 years old, I would believe it. And I think he's still kicking in the league, but man, he just looked like a kid, but he must have had this freaking ability to like Ichiro. You just talk about a Seattle guy. His mechanics must just have been, off the charts.
Yeah. Just the quick twitch, those fast legs, which a lot of I'm just like Tyler. Holy cow!
Yeah,
just kills a ball.
Yeah.
And then he hits it squarely. There's so many good kickers anymore. It's funny to hear people around, like in I'm at the PE department here over just outside Seattle at a high school. And the other PE teachers, of course, they're all sports fans. So we talk, you missed a short one. Oh, no. And they lost again. Well, how far was it? It was like 43 or something. I'm thinking, well, now hold up here. That seemed long when I was playing. Maybe a little different, but they're so good. And they hit such a clean ball. Tyler hit such a clean ball. Yeah. And that's where and Dustin did too. And it just that he's cheap. Yeah. He's got those fast muscle fibers.
Can you take us back to then 2 years in Seattle, right? And then were you pursued by the 3 years in Seattle? Did you what made you come to Buffalo?
Well, it was kind of a funny thing. I even I came in for 2000, the fifth game, and then played 01-02, and I was a restricted free agent, which usually they don't go anywhere necessarily, especially kicker wise. And Buffalo came in, the Jets of all people came in, and so I remember having a meal with their special teams coach. And so kind of surprising. I remember I even bought a house. I thought, well, we're not going anywhere. I might as well just buy a house, kind of settle in, because this was going to be the area, I settle in anyway. So then 3 months later, I signed with Buffalo, and it was just, they gave me a deal. And then Seattle said, okay, no, we're not matching that. Then off I went. It was kind of a bit surprising, just because, and of course, what do I know? I've been through it all before, but I didn't think the restricted free agent was going to go anywhere. But I did.
We had Kavika Mitchell on earlier, and he had just come off winning not just winning the Super Bowl with the Giants, but being a real key player in their run. And they didn't re-sign him after that. He admitted he was kind of hurt about it, but then he really felt like Buffalo wanted him, and it was true. So look, I know you're busy. We have a couple games you want to talk about before we do a 2-minute warning segment with you. But one of the games, I'll do the first one. It was against the Washington Redskins in 2007. A crazy stat line. We won the game 17-16 without scoring a touchdown. You had 5 field goals, and we had a safety. And it was a game, and I remember it well. Sean Taylor had just suddenly died that week. So 85,000 people. The stadium had an emotion in it that there was a pall around it. But they started the game with only 10 defenders in his honor. There was a moment of silence. Fred Jackson got like 20 yards on that play, but then it came down to you with a game-winning field goal opportunity, and somehow the legendary coach Joe Gibbs iced you not once but twice, and when he did it the second time, that was an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty that gave you 15 yards closer, and you nailed it. What are your memories of that game and maybe even that situation?
Yeah, well, and if I remember right, so you might have to fact check me here, but I think I made all those kicks in the second half. I think.
Wow.
Or it was just kind of, we just got on a runner of just field goal. And then, so for me, it was bliss. I thought, this is fantastic. I can get in a little bit of a rhythm here and kind of go, I mean, obviously wanted touchdowns, but, and then it got down to that end. And so they called time, and then I even got to kick it. And I remember thinking at the end, oh, he lost the game because they screwed. And I'm kind of thinking, well, now hold up here. Now, I could have made that. Give me a little credit here. But then he called it again, and I was thinking, well, now wait, hold up here. You can't do that, And so we scooted up 36-yarder. And then those ones get a little, so I had to kind of take a deep breath, because everybody's, oh, boo, 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 like, oh, the game's over now. Well, I still have to make this dumb thing. So, you still have to hit a fairly clean, but you still have a 2.5-foot putt here to finish off. And so thankfully, I made that. And then afterwards, I think he had asked the ref, can I call timeout here? This is a story I got, so who knows? And the ref was like, kind of like, well, you can do anything you want. But he didn't tell him it's going to be a penalty. But so he calls time again, and then there's the flag, and that was a funny ending. And then you throw in the Sean Taylor stuff, and that was an odd game.
Another one that I'm sure everybody listening will remember is 2011, the game against New England. Fred Jackson, runs the ball down to the 1-yard line, and then kind of goes down. Can you kind of talk to me about what your thought process was, as and we've seen this more in the NFL now, where teams will intentionally not score to set up the field goal on the last play of the game. Anything different in your mind when you're standing there for like 2 straight minutes, knowing that you're going to have to hit what people would call a chip shot to beat the vaunted Patriots? Is there anything different in your preparation, or does it feel weird when you know that the offense is intentionally not scoring and then it's going to be all on you?
Yeah. Was there any part of you that was kind of just hoping Fred would score and then you just deal with it?
Well, yeah, I mean, a little bit, but then I have totally understood. So I was like, okay, this is what you got to do here. What I got better at, thankfully, my first couple of years, I might have thought a little differently with it, but I got a better routine, a better full routine of like when they ice you, say when they call, the old call timeout. Well, then I go to the sideline and then I start the routine from there. So I just kind of had to wait until I could start my whole routine. And that kind of helped me stay relaxed, because I thought, that little voice is coming in your head that's trying to anyway, that says, boy, how about walking around town after missing this one? And you kind of have to keep that out. Go away.
Does that game-winning kick feel any less exciting or any less not important, but when it's a chip shot? I mean, did it feel better hitting a 43-yarder for the win rather than a 20-yarder? Does that matter at all?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit, but that's maybe more of kind of an ego thing, I suppose. I think the 28 is kind of more the offense getting you down there in a sense, and Fred doing the smart thing. And I remember Belichick was all fired up because I think they had a penalty that allowed us to take more time off the clock. They had some.
They did. They did.
Or something.
It got it past the 2-minute warning, so that they were out of timeouts and the Bills could just kneel it. And we saw that in the Bills Miami game this year, the regular season game in Buffalo, where the Bills got it down to like the 1-yard line, and that seemed a little bit more risky because the weather was bad and it was snowing. Yep. Do you have a favorite kick? Like, do you have one that you remember either make or miss?
I certainly remember most of the misses, which is not fun, but I remember. Well, thank you. I remember. I certainly remember that one because it was just finally okay. We beat these
people.
Whoever's. I gotta watch my language.
Fill in the blank. Yeah, we all.
I remember, and as more of a story at the end in the overtime portion, I guess. But the Pittsburgh, I remember I made, because I had to make two of them. We made one, and then it was, they called timeout. And then it was a 49-yarder at the end of half. My mom was there. So I kind of remember that one. I remember thinking, okay, that's kind of what a good professional kicker would do, was make that 49-yarder to send it to overtime. And that was, 2010. I'm kind of guessing on that. But so that one was big. A couple in Seattle just because it was so new, and it was just, I remember making a 48-yard my first year, down by one kind of thing, and we won it. But yeah, I wish there were some more playoff Super Bowl kind of memories I could pull from.
You had a great career.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
So,
do you before we let you go, normally what we do with the guys is we play something called a 2-minute warning, where we ask you 10 quick questions, and just kind of off the wall and fun, and we just get to see how many we can fit in and how many fun answers you can give us. So, Don, if you want to go ahead and start.
Okay. I got a few between season 1 and 2. My good friend Ron Kukin, my cousin Johnny. So a favorite sports movie.
Oh, geez. I guess I'm in baseball mode. Field of Dreams is pretty good. I was thinking that the other day.
Where is the most interesting place, or where do you typically watch an NFL Sunday or a Bills game now?
Well, it's a 2-minute drill, so I got to hurry here. Probably the living room, because it's closer to the fridge, closer to where the food is.
If the Bills are on, are they the team you watch the most?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah, we got the package for it. I watched every one of them, yeah.
Awesome. That's the last time I saw you was the Monday Nighter in Seattle in 2016. You were on the sideline. I hope it's the Bills that made that happen for you. I didn't know how you were there. It was just great to see you. So, okay, 3 people, dead or alive, you'd want to dine with.
Oh, well, I'll throw you a wrinkle there with my biology. I always thought Gregor Mendel, the father of genetics, was kind of an interesting cat.
There you go.
He was one of my favorites.
No one has put him up yet, so that's a new one.
Well, I'm trying to put him on the map. I'm trying to. Okay. I like old Gregor. I was always a big Ozzie Smith fan, and I actually got to meet him one time. He came through Buffalo to talk. And I guess old George Washington.
Beautiful.
One of those. I could maybe even say John Adams. But probably George.
Great series on HBO, John Adams. Yeah.
So you're walking into an arena. You're the star of the show. There's dry ice, and the speakers are blaring. What song is playing? What's your entrance song?
Well, I think of this coming out of the pen, throwing about 110 miles an hour. So that's kind of where my mind goes on this. But you can't play the whole song because it gets a little off. But the beginning of Rage Against the Machine. I think it's Killing in the Name of.
Yeah.
So maybe
I know
don't play the whole song, but
I know
it.
That's hilarious. Okay. Yeah, we got to cut that off at some point.
So maybe it's a short entrance.
All right. Funny. So the best concert you've ever seen?
Can I throw 2 in there?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Because I don't remember it all that great, except for the funny smells around. But it was the Skid Row opened up for Guns N' Roses in 1990 Tacoma Dome. So that was, I wish I could go back and see that one again. But okay. Tom Petty, I saw Tom Petty at, I guess they call it T-Mobile Park now, but yeah, used to be Safeco. So that was good. We just kept hit after hit with Tom Petty.
So when you come back to Buffalo, where would you go to eat and what would you get?
Oh, geez. Well, now I got to, there's definitely some options, and I do miss that. I think probably because it was our go-to down the road at Orchard Park, Capelli's, and get an old turkey supreme or a cheese flip with ham. I used to love getting, if I ordered it once, I ordered it 100 times.
Very good.
Right or wrong.
That's good stuff. Favorite cartoon growing up as a kid?
Well, it was kind of my timer to catch the bus. The second commercial break of He-Man.
That's great. That's great. So, I use cartoons as my timer for the bus too. That's fantastic.
Yes.
That makes me laugh. Is there a popular food that you hate?
Well, I'll throw this out there. I don't know how beef on weck has ever got any popularity. I know I'm making a lot of enemies.
Oh no,
that's another hot take.
Oh no,
Kavika Mitchell said wings.
Kavika Mitchell doesn't like chicken wings. You're the first beef on weck. Wow, ouch. Okay.
Well, then what's all the salt? What's going on here with all that?
What stadium fans heckled you the most that you recall?
Well, I had some bad games in Buffalo, but I won't say them. I do miss Buffalo. Boy, probably the Jets were kind of right on you. Nothing overly. They of course, a lot of the stadiums are right on you. Kind of was game dependent, I guess. But the Jets they'd always have fun, kind of yelling at you.
2 more here. Can you drive a stick shift?
Oh yeah, I had a couple of sticks. A V-Dub Rabbit 80. What was that? A 78 V-Dub Rabbit.
Wow.
Your first car is a friend asked me to ask what your first car was, so that's good stuff. And do you leave the dryer running when you leave the house? And then we'll go to the last one.
Wow, that's a new one.
Yeah, well, I guess I do.
Okay.
When I do dry,
I think there's another answer in there that Ryan might not want to share. Can you sing us last one? Can you sing us 5 seconds of the Washington State fight song?
Oh, well, fight for Washington State, win the victory. We're going to win the day for Crimson and Gray. Should I continue on?
Beautiful. No, that's one I didn't know. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for that and for your time. Hopefully you have a great rest of your day. Looks like a beautiful day up there.
Yeah. It's shaping up. We'll get outside today. We'll bring the PE kids outside. This will be good.
Awesome catching up with you, Ryan. This is great. Yeah. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Good chatting with you guys. Thank you.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Take care.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. All right, that was great.
I told you, I knew. I think I tweeted last night after you got things rolling there about. The media didn't seek him out. He wasn't a guy that they thought they'd get a hot take and he was so reliable. But man, when you get to know him, that was a really good taste of what he's about.
Kickers are interesting. It's an interesting job. It's a unique job. There's so few of them, and it's one of those things where you're important for 5 minutes a week. 5 minutes a week, literally.
You have said on this program multiple times about our own jobs.
There
were certain ones that all you can do is mess it up.
Yes.
And there's some of that for a kicker. I guess maybe an offensive lineman, you're supposed to do your job, to get a holding penalty that hurts or whatever. But there's a clear example of that, and I love how he admitted a couple things when you asked him about, are you rooting for the other guy to miss? I mean. Kind of had to say,
yeah. You're human. You're human. You have a family. He was young at that time, so he probably didn't have kids yet. But I'd root for the other guy to miss. You'd be kind of silly unless you have had a career like Billy Brooks did, like he did. Like he said with Dustin Hopkins. If you've been in the league 12, 13, 14 years, and you see your time ending, but year one, I mean, think about how winning that job in Seattle changed his life.
It did. You're right. Yeah, he stuck with it. He just kept saying no one said no yet or something to that effect.
Right.
right?
Yeah, no, that's that sums up some of my dating after I got divorced the first time. you just kept taking them out until they said no, right? It's kind of amazing how that goes. You got to poke fun at yourself every once in a while. So, before we go here, like you said, next week we're going to have on John Guy. And I know you're really excited and impressed to talk to him. I think he's the perfect guy to have on for the start of free agency. He was in all those discussions.
A decision maker.
Right.
He will be on our program so far. He will bring more insight than anyone we ever had. It was a privilege to me to work with him. But he will tell you what a team, and very timely with free agency next week, he will tell you what the teams are thinking and how they read the tea leaves and how they prepare and what that night and the ensuing days are like. He's a funny guy too. We'll also have Robert Royal, Paul Poslesny's coming on. Oh, and next Friday, Mark Gaughan from the Buffalo News will be with us. And he's part of the Hall of Fame selection committee too. So
all right,
he'll be.
Before we go,
yeah,
we are going to, for season 2. I have good news for you. We're going to continue the wheel of failed Bills coaches.
I had a feeling that's what you were doing.
That's exactly what I was doing.
Somebody was out there spinning the wheel.
That is correct. So just for anybody who's new or who doesn't remember, Don was the director of football administration for 13 years. In those 13 years, the Bills made the playoffs exactly 0 times. I decided when we started this podcast to challenge his knowledge of all of the coaches that went through the buildings in the numerous regimes that he was basically a part of having hired and then fired, and getting to know these guys and helping them. So they're not failed NFL coaches. Yeah. They are failed Bills coaches. Today, we're going to go way off the board. I do not know who this person is. Assistant running backs coach Charles Huff. Well, I always like when you have a little. Okay, good. At least we know who he is.
Yep.
He's now the head coach at Marshall.
Is he really?
Yes.
Wow. Well, this is then there's a self-fulfilling prophecy at play. By the way, I like to when you think about this, our friends over at Armstrong's Barbershop, who I know everyone sitting in that chair today is probably talking about Tremaine Edmonds and Jordan Poyer, but they're friends of the program for multiple reasons.
Absolutely.
But Charles Huff was a very young, charismatic coach, assistant running backs coach. Okay, let me back up. He was on the coaching staff. He wasn't a coach at the time, which is relevant to the story.
Okay,
because he, when you called his voicemail in his office, it would say, "Hello, this is Coach Charles Huff."
I know where you're going.
That was not on. I don't mean to take a shot at him. He was aspiring to be a coach, and obviously he's done very well with it. But there were a few guys in that, in those positions that were kind of apprentices, and some embraced it for what it was. They all were aspiring to be coaches.
Correct.
But others were quick to label themselves coaches however they could, and he did it in his voicemail.
There was a pecking order, and that's funny you say that.
Yeah.
I remember getting business cards, and I was specifically told that you are not a coach. You are a coach's assistant.
Yeah.
And on the business card, it said quality control assistant. And under no circumstances did I ever utter the word coach in terms of myself. I called everybody else coach.
You were on the coaching staff.
I was on the I called myself a coaching assistant, which is exactly what I was.
You can't argue that.
But I was specifically told by a person in the organization when I was getting my business cards from Gail Zielinski, nicest lady in the world. Somebody came out of their office and told me, "You are not a coach." And now I didn't say I was. It was a one-way conversation.
That was the second rudest thing, and I never said to you, Karl Marx.
Not second. It was way down the line. It was probably about 10th. Karl wins.
Yeah.
But no, I'd say it's about 10th. But it's funny you say that. There was a clear delineation, and Chris Dixon at the time, who was the offensive quality control, he straddled the line between like coach and assistant. And it's funny, some guys would call him coach, some other guys wouldn't, and it was kind of this like weird thing. And some of the established coaches were kind of pissy about it.
You have to earn that title.
Yeah.
And here in this case with hello, you've reached Coach Charles Huff. Like I always thought to myself, I've seen this role before, and you nailed it exactly right. But I always thought, what if the head coach calls you and hears that?
Yeah.
After he's kind of told you where you stand in the organization.
It was a bold move.
It
now,
was.
Interestingly enough, in his career that I have up here, that was his only year in the NFL as a coach. As a coach's assistant. Sorry.
Yeah. He's the head coach at Marshall.
He's the head coach at Marshall.
No kidding.
So he went after
Right.
1 year. He went to Western Michigan as the running backs coach.
Okay.
Then he went to Penn State for 4 years.
I heard that. I remember that.
Mississippi State. He was the assistant head coach. Then he was the assistant head coach and running backs coach at Alabama for 2 years, which is about as high as you could get in college football. Yeah. And from 2021 till now, he's the head coach of Marshall. He's 16-10, and he's 1-1 in bowl games. So he's clearly done very well for himself. And I'm sure if you called his voicemail now, it would probably say head coach Charles Huff, right?
I can't reach him directly now. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a secretary and a wall, and that's really funny because that whole. I was made very aware on day one that I was not a coach.
Yep.
And
there are others that came later in the same situation. They would do the same thing. And then with the advent of social media, some put on their title or whoever they're called, Coach so-and-so. Like, really?
Well, his annual salary is $755,000.
Oh,
so I'm sure that's quite a bump from the 2012 assistant running backs, coach's assistant with the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
Hopefully everybody enjoyed this episode. Like I said, we're going to be back Monday with John Guy. And then
Rian Lindell had a great time, everybody. He enjoyed our talk. So,
he seems like a really good dude.
Yep.
So we'll see everybody next week. We got a couple of shows, and we'll go from there.
Awesome.
Take care, everybody.
Look forward to it. Thanks.